Hello and welcome to this Dr. Ross Maths key skill video on changing the subject of a linear formula requiring a single step. Now what it means for something to be the subject of a formula is for it to be on its own on one side of the equation. So can you see in this formula here we've got y equals x plus 3. So we've got y in terms of x and y is on its own on one side of the equation. So that y there we would say is the subject. It's on its own on one side of the equation. But we want to make x the subject of this equation. So we want x to be on its own on one side of the equation. Now we can use exactly the same skills as we did to solve an equation. Because remember, if we wanted to solve an equation in terms of x, that means to work out the value of x. Now it's slightly different here because we want to work out the value of x, but it's not going to be a number, it's actually going to be an expression in terms of other variables in that equation. So let's write this out. We've got y equals x plus 3. We want to make x the subject, get x on its own. Now to get something on its own, we know that we get rid of the stuff around it. Now with x, we added 3 to it, but we don't want that plus 3 because we want x on its own. Now we know to get rid of plus 3, we do the opposite. So we subtract 3 and that will get rid of it. And whatever we do to one side of the equation, we know we have to do the same to the other. So we're going to minus 3 here to get rid of that plus 3. We also have to minus 3 from the left side of the equation. So minusing 3 here just gets x. And if we do y minus 3, we just get y minus 3. We can't simplify that. And that's the solution because we've got x on its own on one side of the equation. You might wonder, do we want to put x on the left side of the equation? And it does look a bit better because if something's the subject of the formula, it does make more sense to say, well, x can be defined as y minus 3 rather than saying the value of y minus 3 is x. The first one sounds better. So we tend to put the subject on the left side of the equation, but that's absolutely fine here. They're both correct as a solution. What about b? We want to make x the subject in this case. We want to get x on its own on one side of the equation. Well, x has been multiplied by a because when you have two things next to each other in algebra, it means you're multiplying them. So if multiplied by a and we want to get rid of the times by a to get x on its own, we have to do the opposite. So we have to divide that by a to get rid of the times by a. And whatever we do to the right hand side of the equation, we have to do the same to the other side. So we divide both sides by a. Y divided by a is just y over a. And we should write it like a fraction like this. And then dividing by a here just gets rid of the a, we get x, and we're done. And we could write x on the left, so x equals y over a, but you don't need to do that. What about c? Y is equal to x minus 3p. We want to get x on its own. We don't want this minus 3p after the x, so to get rid of it, we add 3p to both sides. So if we do that, well, y plus 3p is just y plus 3p. You can't simplify that. They're not like terms because they have different letters. And if we plus 3p here, it gets rid of the minus 3p, just leaving x. And we're done because we've got x on its own on one side of the equation. And finally, d, we've got y is equal to x over q. Now, what's happening around x that we need to get rid of? Well, x is being divided by q. We want to get rid of the divide by q, so we do the opposite. We times both sides by q. Now, if we do y times q, we get yq, but we tend to put the letters in alphabetical order, so we're actually going to have qy. And if we times by q on this side, it just gets rid of the over q, and we end up with x. And there we go, we're done because x is on its own on one side of the equation.